You're listening to Sirius XM. I'm Julie Mason. Congressman Michael McCaul is a Republican of Texas, representing the state's 10th congressional district. He tweets at Rep. McCaul. He's with me on Republicans on the Select Committee on the Coronavirus. They're having a hearing into the origins of COVID-19. He is speaking at the hearing. Congressman, welcome back.
Oh, hey, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Nice.
Thanks.
So the worst cover-up in human history.
Yes, they went to great lengths to cover this up. They detained the doctors. They silenced them, the ones talking about a SARS-like virus. They went into the lab, destroyed lab samples, wouldn't report that it was human-to-human transmission. And then the WHO, under Director General Tedros, who was really acting as a puppet of President Xi, really failed to warn the world of a global pandemic, and that's how this whole pandemic started.
How hard is it to get information and evidence in this case, with China being so just difficult to deal with?
Well, it's very difficult. We have uncovered some interesting points, but we may never know the truth because they won't allow access into the lab itself. And even the WHO, they kicked out of the lab, which I think speaks volumes. So we may never know the truth, but there are things that are, I think, interesting signs, like 3 lab workers hospitalized with flu-like symptoms consistent with COVID. We had the POA bioweapons expert, Major General Chen Wei, take over the WIV lab. Even before it was reported, the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then this latest gain of function, they call it, where there's evidence that they may have been genetically modifying a SARS-like virus at this very lab, the very thing we think COVID is. And so there was also an event that took place that's called the World Military Games in October of 2019. Had about 9,000 athletes from all over, from 100 countries, and many of these athletes came down with flu-like symptoms. So we think it was actually prevalent even back probably to September 2019. And the fact of the matter is all these cases end up right around where the Wuhan lab is where it is located.
Well, how close are you to thinking this was a bioweapon?
Well, I think from what I've seen so far that they were genetically modifying viruses to create a super SARS-like virus, so then they could create a vaccine. We don't know if it was weaponized, and if it was, obviously they're signatory to the Biological Weapons Convention. The military was operating at the Wuhan lab, so that's obviously of some concerns. We'll be releasing another updated report next month. We released our Origins of COVID-19 report, last year, but we're going to be updating it with these new findings that we found.
And what are you going to be talking about today? These new findings?
I think primarily that we're working on a report. Kind of update this committee that I think, back when the last report was made, we found it to be, it was, we couldn't discount the lab, but I think now it's more probable than, we knew the likelihood, but I think it's more probable that it did come out of the lab, is in my assessment.
And Congressman, why is it so important to understand the origins of the virus at this point?
So that it never happens again. We cannot have this happen again. If they were genetically manipulating these viruses, at either the level 4 facility or some evidence that may have been at level 2, which is less secure, this is a very dangerous practice. And they had, they leaked the SARS virus out of one of their labs, in 2004. We know their safety protocols were questioned by the State Department. And, they're playing a dangerous game. And I think the international community needs to stand up and take control over this. These labs operating in a very unsafe manner, so this manipulation can't harm the world. We've lost nearly 4 million people and $10 trillion over this pandemic.
How do you feel about the recovery, and how's it going in Texas?
I think it's going very well. I mean, Texas is very much back to normal. Mm-hmm. I'm up here in D.C. and CDC protocols. If you have a vaccine, you don't have to wear a mask. So we don't have to wear a mask on the floor, for instance. Mm-hmm. So I really think this going into the summer that we're going to see normalcy. We're a little worried about this variation, this variant that's going around, but it seems like the vaccine protects pretty well from that.
Yeah, there was some reporting in the New York Times this week that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines could be good for years, could give protection for years, which is extraordinary. I thought we're all going to need boosters.
And when you have these mutations, it seems to cover those variations of COVID-19, which is all very good news. Mm-hmm. So I think globally, though, I mean, still India is getting hit really hard, and other parts of the world, and we want to make sure also that we get the vaccines to counter what we call vaccine diplomacy, which China and Russia are very engaged in. China is giving away their vaccine in exchange for promises like not recognizing Taiwan. So I think there's a foreign policy here where we've got to get this vaccine out to other countries to counter what China's doing.
Yeah, but no one wants those Chinese and Russian vaccines. I mean, the China one apparently doesn't really work, and people seem very leery of the Russian vaccine. But poor countries, you can't be choosy.
Well, that's right, and they want our vaccine. They would prefer that. So I think it's a good foreign policy to be able to counter what we call vaccine diplomacy. But you're right; their vaccines are inferior to ours. And the irony is that if China is giving away this vaccine for the virus, the very virus that it may have created in a laboratory.
Congressman Michael McCaul is a Republican of Texas. Find him on Twitter at Rep. McCaul. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thanks for having me.
Always good to talk to you. Take care.
You too. Thank you.